Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program in which we tell the stories of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. On April 21st, 2019, on Easter Sunday at approximately 8:45 a.m., a series of bombings began in the Sri Lankan capital of Columbo, with an explosion at the St. Anthony's Church, the country's national Catholic shrine. Within 45 minutes, a second bomb exploded at St. Sebastian's Catholic Church in Negombo, and then a third bomb exploded at the Protestant Zion Church in Batikaloa. At the same time, there were explosions at 3 hotels in Colombo, popular with Western tourists. The final figures calculate 260 dead and 500 wounded. The Islamic State claimed the attacks, but the government has blamed a local Islamist extremist group, the National Tawhid Jamaat, for the bombings. After nearly a year, 300 people have been arrested, and only some of the churches have been repaired, reconsecrated, and reopened. To tell us more, it's my privilege to welcome Father Nishanta Cooray, a priest at the St. Peter's Church in Ragama, some 10 miles outside Colombo, where at his Easter Sunday Mass, all of a sudden, the police entered, stopped the Mass, and asked the people to leave as soon as possible. Welcome, Father, and thank you for being with us here today on our program.
Yes, Mark, it is nice to be here today.
Father, can you tell us, how would you describe the mood in Sri Lanka today?
As we know, Sri Lanka has experienced 30 years brutal war. And actually, I don't like to recall the bad memories of that brutal war. Once the war was over, for 10 years, we experienced a tremendous peace in our country. And we did not have any problem. All our place of worship, whether it's a Buddhist, Catholics or Hindu or Islamic, it was very well. And we experienced a wonderful peace and tranquility in the country. But this attack was quite unexpected, because Catholic Church in Sri Lanka did not have any enemy at all. On the one hand, our charity works based on non-Catholic brothers and sisters. On the other hand, as a group or as an individual, we have not done any harm to any other culture, nationality or religious group. And this was really surprising. On the one hand, it was a sacred day. People were so free in coming to church for their worship. Anyhow, after happening this great brutal attack, the situation of the country has come back to normal. Even then, we have the fear of attack, because time to time we hear certain rumors. And so the church authority has to be very careful on protecting the faithful.
So there are rumors that, for example, another attack might take place.
Yes.
So there's still a sense of fear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But very happy to say, even though it's a duty of the church authority to protect the people, people have increased their faith. Even though the fear is there, they are so enthusiastically coming to the daily worship and the Sunday services.
So there's a renewed faith. I want to come back to this question of the faith and the impact of that terrible tragedy today on the faith. But I want to take us back to the day itself. You were there, you were celebrating Mass. Police entered into your church and told you, stop the Mass, because there had been 3 bombs that had taken place in churches in other parts of the country. Can you tell us, what was the emotion that you had on that day?
Yes, I was celebrating my Easter Mass at St. Peter and Paul's Church at Ragama. And it was one of the biggest churches in the Archdiocese of Colombo.
How many faithful would be gathering, for example, on an Easter Sunday Mass?
there are about 400 families, 4,000 families in the parish. Actually, I was saying the English Mass, and the biggest Mass was in the morning, 7:30. It was celebrated by Father Gregory Jayanta, the parish priest of the parish. And I was asked to celebrate the English Mass. While I was celebrating, when it came to the time of distributing Holy Communion, the police immediately entered into the church with the parish priest. And parish priest came to me and said secretly, Nishanta, we have to stop the Mass. I asked, why? What's the reason? And he was so shocked and so upset, he was almost crying. Then I turned towards the police officer and I said, why? I have never experienced something like this throughout the course of 14 years of my priesthood. Then even the police officer was so upset, and he was saying, Father, series of bomb attacks had taken place targeting some the popular churches in Columbo. Immediately we have to disperse the crowd from the church and the church premises, because there may be the possibility of another attack. So we all were crying in the altar, and we did not know what to do. And this was the first experience of mine. I couldn't believe my eyes, but we had to do it.
Father, you were then you then became very active. You were asked by your superior to go to the hospital where some of the bomb victims had been sent immediately after the attacks. You drove 10 miles to get to that hospital. What was the situation when you arrived to this unbelievable carnage that had occurred?
Actually, the bomb blast took place in Negombo, and the Negombo hospital was not big enough to occupy all the victims. So all the critically wounded people were to sent to Ragam Hospital, and the Ragam Hospital was a walking distance, about 5-minute walk from the Ragam church. So together with the parish priest, Father Gregory, I rushed to the hospital. And it was my provincial who asked me to go, because I was worked in that Katwapiri parish for a long time. Even we have some monastery there. I was there. And when I went there, already the hospital authority was ready to accept the wounded people to the hospital, doctors, nurses, and the mine staff and all that. Very happy to say there were some Buddhist monks too to facilitate the people. And the hospital chaplain, Father Dulip Kamal, he was also there. And the reason for sending me there was because all the people of Katwapiti area was known to me, because I was there for a long time.
So these would have been some friends, of course, friends of yours.
Yeah, exactly. And I was also very emotional. I mean, it's all when the wounded people were taken to hospital, many died on the way, and some other people died on arrival, and those who were critically wounded were admitted to the intensive care. And the hospital premises was one big pandemonium, and the relatives were there to see the real condition of their relatives, and some other people were there to get the correct, accurate the information about their relatives. And we had to be so prudent because we were also so emotional. On the other hand, together with the hospital chaplain, we had to minister them the last sacrament.
So people they were dying in your hands.
Yeah.
What was your emotional response? How did you keep your faith? How did you not get angry yourself at seeing this damage?
Because we were not angry at all, but we were shocked without knowing what to do. On the one hand, we had to console our friends who were the victims. On the other hand, the relatives who were they were not actually aggressive. They were helpless without knowing what to do. This was quite unexpected. And even our hands were shivering. Our lips were shivering without knowing what to say. Only hope was in God. And we were asking God to do something. And we were not strong enough. We were also emotional. And without crying, without showing our tears, inside we burned everything. And that was the real situation of all the priests there.
Father, there were 500 wounded, there were 260 killed. How were the families dealing with the grief then and still today? How are they able to process that grief?
if I go back to your first question again, once my duty was over at Ragam Hospital, and there was another threat of attack. So the police dispersed the crowd, and once again my provincial Father Malakalanat Fernando asked me to come to Katuapitia Church, because again the people are known to me very well. When I went there were many bodies in the church under the supervision of JM of the Negombo Hospital, and we had a great duty of taking these dead bodies to Negombo Hospital with due dignity and without confusing people. And the second thing, by 5 o'clock, I was at the Negombo Hospital mortuary, recognizing the bodies, and the many people, the relatives, were around the mortuary to claim the bodies of their relatives, parents, brothers and sisters and children and all that. And by 11 o'clock night, and we were able to, together with other priests, to hand over the bodies to the families. And the next, the difficulty was to take bodies to the mortal remains to their own homes. And there was a big challenge. Then again my provincial came up. Not only my provincial, many priests were there, and his duty is with his own priest, and he cancelled holidays and all the duties of all the priests and asked them to come to Katuapitia. And he divided 30 priests into 3 groups, and 10 were asked to go to the funeral houses where the mortal remains were brought on that particular night, and others will go to hospital 10 to give spiritual assistance and other assistance to those who are in the hospital, and others were kept for anything in case of emergency.
And which group were you with?
TR Franciscans.
Mm-hmm. But which group were you divided into?
I was both in the hospital and with the families. Okay. Practically in that the particular night, I was able to visit almost all the families in Katuapitia area, and we did not know what to say when you enter the family homes. Only thing what could do was to sit by them, silently pray. But the great thing, they did not diminish their faith. Certain answers given by them, even that strengthened my own faith.
For example?
For an example, there was one father. He was about 40 years old, and he was just standing in front of the coffin of his own wife and young 3 daughters. He is known to me for a long time. Not a good friend of mine, but we were known. And just to get into a conversation with the person, I just asked, you see what has happened? You are still silent. This is the 2 words. He said, yes, Father, I am silent. What else I can do? And I just looked at his face without saying anything. And he was saying, Father, just 2 days before, we were celebrating Good Friday. On that particular day, my Lord was taken before Pilate. He was silent. And that was the biggest injustice ever took place in the history of the world. So this is my chance. We will have the resurrection. I'm sad, but God has given a wonderful time to experience this silence. Definitely, I will be comforted by him. So I as a priest, it was a challenge. It was a challenge for my faith too. And there was another place, another young father standing before the coffin of his own young little daughter. I just wanted to talk to him without confusing his faith. And he himself began. He did not say that he was happy and that his emotion cannot be explained with the word, but he was saying, after receiving Jesus, after receiving Holy Communion inside of the church, my daughter died, Father. Directly he is in heaven. And there was another young girl whose parents were killed in the attack, and she was about 19 years old, and a student of mine too, and she held in my hand, she was crying. I said, let's pray. And she was saying, on the 20, just 1 month before, 3 months before the blast, they celebrated the sacred jubilee of the church, 150. And the church is dedicated to St. Sebastian. And the young girl was telling me and challenging me, and she was saying, Father, for 150 50 years, we have been reflecting and praying over the martyrdom of St. Sebastian. It is given to us now. This is the gift of Jubilee. My sadness is it is given to my parents, not given to me. And another lady, young lady, who shared with me her own experience. Up to now, my husband was a normal man and 2 sons normal boys, but now they are saints. I have born 2 saints in my womb, and I lived lovingly years with a saint. She didn't say that she is happy, but she tries to express in her emotions more than happiness. That's their faith.
And how did it change your faith?
When I heard the attack for the first time, I was shocked. I was asking my God, I was also just after receiving my communion, what is this? Lord, didn't you see this? How come these innocents were killed? And when I went from house to house, they did not have that shock. Being lay people, and they were not trained in a seminary or no theological knowledge, anything, but they taught me and they answered me. God wanted my children to be martyrs, His saints. Because the other thing, if that not happened, nobody knows there is a group of terrorists, Muslim terrorists in Sri Lanka. The attack could be more massive somewhere in Sri Lanka. And God saved us through this experience. And because of this experience, we knew that IS people are so strong in our country.
Father, you were also very involved in the post-traumatic care. You were sent in teams to go around and travel throughout the country to visit the families. How do you move forward? How does the country move forward from a situation like this? Not only from the perspective of the Catholic community, but also many Muslims were killed. Many Buddhists were killed also in the hotel attacks and things like this. Has there been a greater division as a consequence of this attack on the country, or would you say, in fact, it has led to some kind of unity within the different religious communities in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, it's a great shock for entire country. And in my opinion, as what I experienced in the very incident, and this was a moment at which our religious unity was very much strengthened. Actually, I should appreciate and I should talk in the sense of gratitude towards Buddhist brothers in Sri Lanka, especially the chief Buddhist monks. They helped a lot to our people. Even the Hindu priests and the Hindu people, they came to these areas and they went from house to house. Sometimes they met our priests and they helped us in every possible way. And even the Muslim priests and the Muslim leaders wanted to do it, but the situation was so emotional,
so tense,
that they were not able to get in. But in high level, high rank, let's say with bishops, with cardinals, they came to discuss and they talked. And there was sometimes there are certain incidents they publicly apologized Christians for happening it, because the complaint was to Muslims. But I did not see any type of damage to the religious unity in Sri Lanka, but it's strengthened.
In fact, from what I've read, from what I've understood, many Buddhists were deeply, profoundly impressed by the reaction of the Christians, by the reaction of the Catholic community in not seeking retaliation or revenge.
The reason was His Eminence Malcolm Ranjit, the Archbishop of Columbo, very seriously he asked the Catholic people not to raise their hand against Muslim brothers.
Because there could have been a very serious reaction immediately after the attacks.
Because the thing was, now in Columbo, St. Anthony's Church, it was a Tamil Mass. And brothers and sisters who died and wounded were Tamils. And Batticaloa, the Saint Protestant Church, and they were also Tamil, totally Tamil, not Sinhalese at all. And in Negombo Katopitiya, all were Sinhalese. And this could have become a great cause for a great conflict.
Between the different
Yes.
ethnic groups.
Yeah. A bishop did not involve directly in the case. He was so serious. And even he said to his own Presbyterian and all the religious priests and sisters and brothers in diocese, be aware of the situation, not to happen anything. But the very nice thing was, he went to some mosques just 2 days after this great attack, and he talked with them, and they were very happy to welcome Cardinal.
And this question of the Buddhist impression of the lack of retaliation of the Christian community, has this drawn the Buddhist community to a deeper appreciation of the Christians and their positive role within Sri Lanka?
Yes, of course, because this was very much seen in social medias, how the chief monks of Buddhism and the educated monks appreciated Catholic theology. And on the one hand, because if you have some the knowledge on the Buddhism, and it is the religion that talks about metta, mudita, karuna, upekka, means love, innocence, because their religion is a very harmless religion, and they identified the greatness of Christianity in and within their own philosophy, and theologically even we were able to get together with this great reaction of the Cardinal. And the greatest thing was the people were so obedient, Catholic people, because Negombo is predominantly a Catholic area, predominantly, but the other side of Negombo is totally Muslim. At any time there was a possibility of
reaction and violence.
Yeah, but that was not happened. It's a great thing, and it was a great opportunity for us to start a good dialogue with Buddhists, Hindus and Muslims.
In some ways, I suppose, the hope is out of this tragedy, of what this Easter Sunday tragedy, the church itself will be strengthened. There will be new saints growing, as you've mentioned, Tertullian, the blood of the martyrs are the seeds of faith. That new seeds of faith are going to grow in Sri Lanka.
Exactly. And for the first time in whole of my lifetime, for 2 months the churches of our country was closed. No service, no Sunday mass, nothing. And I would share with you one of the experiences of mine. And some Buddhist monks invited our Catholic priests to say their mass inside of their temple premises. That has never happened in our history. And the second thing, and even as a priest, I thought the people may diminish their faith or deteriorate their faith once after the reconstruction or the renovation. Once the church was opened, even the police was not able to control the crowd.
There were so many.
They were. And when the church is closed, with candles in their hand, outside of the road, they were praying. The wonderful thing to see. And they have strengthened their faith. Even before coming here, I was in the church premises, and I was thanking my God. With this blast, even though it is a painful experience for us, God has strengthened their faith. And in my own experience, faith experience, what I do, silence God is suffering with my people. And He is always with my people. We have any reason to be afraid of. Even though we are persecuted, our faith is so strong.
Father, how can we help you? What is it you need?
At the moment, the help is needed to the victims of this. And first, they need some psychological help. So already we have started some counseling programs, and we have resource persons, and we have everything, but we don't have some place to do it. And if there is some person who is in goodwill to help to erect a good place, for that is a great help. And the second attempt is, we need to encourage the reconciliation among people. That could be done only through the sacrament of reconciliation. So as a one congregation, the priest of one community as Franciscans, we have decided to start a big confessional, 24-hour service. We have priests, they are ready, they are generous. And for that also we don't have a place. And we have place, we don't have buildings. If there is someone to help, so that is very much appreciated. And there are many children who are victims, Practically, our order is a teaching order. We have a lot of government teachers. They are there to help them. Free education. And our problem is we have the place, we don't have buildings. Even then, we continue to do it. But if some volunteer is there to help us, some donor is there to help us, and we can do it very well.
Father Nishanta Cooray, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on our program, Where God Weeps, where we've heard the witness and testimony of Father Nishanta Cooray about the situation of Christians in Sri Lanka following the Easter Sunday bombing. If you'd like to help, either through your prayers or your concrete action, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.